Okay, so today I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to make decorative coils. Most of these start out with just a simple coil. Make sure you have plenty of space to work, use the entirety of your hand to roll, and get yourself a nice long coil. The trick here is to make sure that your coil is nice and even. You want the same thickness all the way through, so make sure that you're moving your hand back and forth or using both hands, and compress with a sponge every once in a while to keep that coil nice and moist. If you struggle with making coils, I do have a couple of tips for you. I would start with almost no pressure. Just let the table do the work and roll the coil. If it seems like nothing's happening, then slowly add a little bit more pressure. If it starts to get flat, you're pushing just a little too hard. Sometimes making a coil feels like a race against the clock. You're trying to make a good coil before it dries out, but just take your time, work slowly, and keep adding a little bit of water with that sponge. Also, be aware of what kind of surface you're working on. If you're working on top of something that's really porous, it's going to dry out your coils a lot faster. These are decorative coils, so they're going to use a lot of movement, and so we want to make sure that we avoid any cracking. And my last tip is to keep your hands clean. If you're rolling coils for a long enough time and you're continuously adding water, it's going to make your hands pretty dirty. Make sure that you keep those clean so that they're not crusty and you're not leaving little bits of clay in your coils. So my first example here is just a simple twisted coil. We're going to make sure that these coils are nice and wet, and then we're going to cut them in half, then line them up together and begin to twist them from the top down. Make sure you don't twist so hard that you rip them in half, and keep an eye out for any cracking. The water that we applied to this coil right before we started to twist it is actually going to hold it together, so we don't need to slip and score this together. And just do the best that you can to try to get these twists even. Once you lay it down on the table, you can sort of even things out and twist things a little bit more or untwist them if you need to. This is where it becomes pretty evident that you need good, even coils. If you've twisted together a coil that's kind of lumpy or misshapen, it's going to show really obviously right here. But once you have a twist that you're happy with, I just like to cut each side to sort of seal that off, and then you can just add that to your pot. I'm going to set this one aside, and I'll show you a couple of different techniques. This next one's pretty simple. We're just going to create a tapered edge along one side of this coil. Use a wet finger to sort of slide down the coil and bring it to a point. It'll kind of look like a triangle towards the end. And then you can do a lot of different things with this. You can just use it as a regular coil, or I'm going to kind of squiggle it up here. Coils don't always have to be applied in sort of your typical coiling up fashion. You can make different panels or blocks and then build with those. And this is a great example of one of those panels that you could use. That tapered edge will take glaze a little bit differently, and it looks really nice on a finished pot. This next technique I like to call the narwhal horn. You just take a coil and you lay it over the edge of a table, and then you roll and press into that corner, and that's going to leave a really nice spiral along that coil. The harder you press onto the corner, the deeper that design goes, and you can kind of mess with that and see what you like. This next one's actually really simple. You just take a coil and tap it on the table to flatten out each side. That'll give you sort of a rectangular prism shape, and you can do this in really any shape that you want. The important thing is to create some kind of hard edges, and then we'll twist that coil, and it starts to look like those old wrought iron gates. It's subtle, but remember that variation is glaze's best friend. These small lines here are going to break your glaze differently, and it's going to look incredible. Next is a pinwheel coil. You just take a simple coil, make sure that you get it pretty wet, and then we're just going to grab one end and roll it up. Anytime that you're bending clay pretty aggressively, make sure that you sort of pinch where you're going to bend it to give it a little reinforcement. And we're going to roll it up till it looks like a little snail. This one's kind of a crowd favorite, so I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can do this. All of these techniques are completely variable. You can intermix them, you can change them. Just be creative, do whatever you like, and make something that you're proud of. This one is very similar to that pinwheel coil. We're going to wet it, and then we're just going to roll it up from both ends this time. Again, add just a little bit of pressure as you begin to bend things, and we're going to roll this up, and then we'll roll it up in the other direction so it kind of looks like an S or a figure eight. I think it's really fun to take this shape and then sort of smush it so it's a little more angular. But again, the sky's kind of the limit here, so do whatever you like. Another way to really elevate coils is to stamp them. You can take just a simple coil and then press your tools into them. I'm just using this wooden knife, but you can also use stamps that you've made or just something that you found lying around the house. This extra bit of texture can really change the way that a coil looks, and it definitely changes the way that glaze interacts with your piece. I'm going to roll this one up as a pinwheel, just like I did with the other two, but you'll be able to see how just this really simple stamping method can completely change the way that a coil looks. It's really fun to see how that stamp can sort of warp, so I highly recommend playing around with this technique some. That's it for the decorative coils. Thanks for watching Clay with Trey. Now go make something awesome.